Well, Dr. Eli Ratner, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Indo-Pacific Affairs, Admiral John Aquilino, the Commander for U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, and General Paul LaCamera, the Commander for United Nations Command Combined Forces, U.S. Forces, Korea. I realize at yesterday's hearing I did not read our little hybrid statement, which is very tempting, by the way, because everything seemed to go just fine, even though I didn't read it. But I will read it this morning. We have a hybrid hearing. We have some members appearing remotely as other members here. So members who are joining remotely must be visible on screen for the purposes of identity verification, establishing and maintaining a quorum, participating in the proceeding, and voting. Those members must continue to use the software platform's video function while in attendance, unless they experience connectivity issues or other technical problems that render them unable to participate on camera. If a member experiences technical difficulties, they should contact the committee staff for assistance. Video of members' participation will be broadcast in the room and via the television internet feeds. Members participating remotely must seek recognition verbally, and they are asked to mute their microphones when they are not speaking. Members who are participating remotely are reminded to keep the software platform's video function on the entire time they attend the proceeding. Members may leave and rejoin the proceeding. If members depart for a short while for reasons other than joining a different proceeding, they should leave the video function on. If members will be absent for a significant period or depart to join a different proceeding, they should exit the software platform entirely and then rejoin it if they return. Members may use the software platform's chat feature to communicate with staff regarding technical or logistical support issues only. Finally, I've designated committee staff member to, if necessary, mute unrecognized members' microphones to cancel any inadvertent background noise that may disrupt the proceedings. Thank you. I want to thank our witnesses for being here. Look forward to their testimony, questions, and answers. The Indo-Pacific region is a crucially important region to the national security of the U.S. and to the peace and stability of the world. Obviously, we have learned that the entire world is a challenge with Russia's unprovoked and devastating invasion of Ukraine. We have been reminded that we can't just focus on one part of the world, but the Indo-Pacific region is clearly one of the most important parts of the world. I think it'll be important as we go through all of these hearings from all the different regions, how interconnected everything is. It's not just, great power competition. We're dealing with Russia, we're dealing with China. Russia and China, as we know, are actively engaged in many parts of the world. And the competition here really is to build broad support amongst partners. And that is a global endeavor to basically show that partnering with the U.S. and the West is the better option for frankly, all countries than partnering with Russia and China. And the Indo-Pacific region gives us an outstanding opportunity to do that. It has been described as the pacing threat, however you want to put it. China is without question the country most capable of competing with the U.S. in terms of their economic strength, in terms of their growing military strength, in terms of their global reach. Now, we all want a world where China and the U.S. peacefully coexist, and that is what we are working towards. But over the course of the last decade at least, it has become clear that President Xi in China intends something more combative than that. They are trying to push us out and advance an authoritarian way of looking at the world that has very little respect for human rights or anything other than the blunt force of what they want economically. We need to compete against that. We need to convince the world to go in a different direction, and to do that, we need a robust presence in the Indo-Pacific region. It's just that simple. And our military is a huge part of that. We have important defense relationships, certainly with Japan and South Korea, but with a number of other countries as well. We must maintain and strengthen those relationships, and we must attempt to be a balancing force to keep the peace in Asia. Obviously, nowhere is that more important than on Taiwan. The belligerent language that China has been putting out recently is very, very dangerous. We could easily see a China-Taiwan situation in the same way we now see a Russia-Ukraine situation. We need to constantly remind China that that is not the way global powers are supposed to behave. Whatever differences they have with Taiwan, they should be resolved peacefully, not through the use of military force. But a big part of making sure that happens is to have an adequate deterrence. Is to build partnerships and have a presence in the region that lets China know that that is not an acceptable or doable option, and that requires us to have a robust presence. I am particularly interested this morning in, two big things. One, how are our relationships and partnerships going in the region? I think that's incredibly important. India, in particular, is the largest democracy in the world, but a country that has had a history in the past of being closer to Russia in many ways than to us, but is now moving in our direction. If we can enhance that relationship and strengthen it, I think that makes the world a better and more peaceful place. And then second, this committee has been briefed repeatedly over the course of the last 6 or 7 years about everything that China has done in their military modernization to try to counter us, to basically put our systems and our forces at risk and to, in essence, push us out of the region. We've known about that for some time. I know that we are working on how to adjust to that, how to change our force structure to better deal with what China has done. We need to put meat on those bones. What is it we're doing? What is it we need to be doing? What are the most important things to fund? To me, it comes down to two words as a starting point, and that is information and survivability. China is very focused on improving their command and control information systems, and also equally focused on making ours vulnerable, well, not making ours vulnerable, on taking ours down, on being able to basically blind us and shut us down by shutting down our communication systems and our information systems. How are we improving that? And survivability, it's the platforms that can get into the region and survive with China's missile technology, with their cyber technology, and their ability to shut down our information systems. And as we have talked about ad nauseum on that committee, this comes down a lot to innovation and new technology. And it is readily acknowledged that the Pentagon is not as good at that as they should be. Let's just put it that way. We've got to be able to find new technologies, make the best use out of them, figure out how to make them applicable faster, quicker, and better. Something we're really focused on. So I look forward to hearing from our witnesses this morning on those topics and others. And with that, I will yield to the ranking member, Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the entrance of one of our former colleagues, Ms. Mordayo. Good to see of Guam. Good to see you again. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do thank the witnesses for being here and the time that it took to prepare for this. The conflict between the Chinese Communist Party and American democracy will be one of the greatest tests this nation has ever faced. A modernized military, well-armed allies, and a lethal Taiwan are essential to countering China. But we also need operational concepts that are executable. Over the past year, members of this committee have asked questions about Indo-PACOM's ability to carry out its operational requirements. To date, we've gotten few answers to serious questions about contested logistics. Few answers on accelerating new infrastructure, and few answers on delivering new technology to the battlefield. To make matters worse, the Secretary announced Monday his intention to close the massive Red Hill fuel depot within a year. Red Hill has serious problems, but the Secretary closed Red Hill without laying out the resources needed to replace that capacity. That's extremely short-sighted. The response from the Department has been the same. The answer is just one policy announcement away, and that's unacceptable. What I would like to hear from each of you today is exactly how you will employ new operational concepts, build new systems, and ensure logistics support at new operating locations throughout the Indo-Pacific. But most importantly, I want to know how you intend to do that in the next 5 years. We all know China is not going to give us 10 or 20 years to prepare for the conflict. We simply cannot procrastinate any further. The issues like Red Hill present an opportunity to modernize beyond the World War II logistics model. But I'm deeply worried about the cycle of indecision and procrastination at the Pentagon. And I'm also worried about getting this important work done in the time frame that we have to act. This committee has tried to provide the Department the capabilities it needs to deter China and ensure we prevail if conflict arises. But we can't move with purpose if the Department can't define its requirements. We've tried to nail those down in the PDI. Congress created the Pacific Deterrence Initiative to highlight and expedite the most essential capabilities. But the Pentagon kneecapped the PDI process last year with poor guidance and unclear plans. I hope the DoD can rectify that in this year's budget submission. On top of all this, we've tasked General LaCamera with holding off North Korea. In any other year, North Korea's repeated missile tests would be front-page news. General, you so happen to pick a very busy time to start trying to deal with your challenges over there. The South Koreans are essential allies, and deepening our defense cooperation with them makes us all safer. We want to know what you need to secure the Korean Peninsula in the coming decade. This committee is ready to make bold investments in our defense. I hope to hear today that the department is ready to do the same. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. Dr. Ratner.
Well, Chairman Smith, Ranking Member Rogers, distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today, and it's a privilege to be here with Admiral Aquilino and General LaCamera. As you know, the Indo-Pacific is the priority theater for the Department of Defense, and we remain committed to upholding a free and open regional order. At the same time, the region faces mounting security challenges, particularly from the People's Republic of China, the PRC, which has adopted a more coercive and assertive approach to advancing its authoritarian interests. North Korea's weapons of mass destruction and ballistic missile programs also constitute a serious threat to the United States and our allies and partners. Mr. Chairman, Secretary Austin has described the PRC as the department's top pacing challenge. This prioritization will be reflected in the forthcoming National Defense Strategy and FY23 budget as we continue to update our concepts, capabilities, and force posture to defend the homeland, deter aggression, and prepare to prevail in conflict. We are prioritizing capabilities relevant to the China challenge to enable a joint force that is lethal and able to strike adversary forces and systems at range, resilient and able to gain information advantage and maintain command and control through adversary disruptions, survivable and agile in the face of adversary attacks that seek to reduce combat power and mobilization speed, and able to provide the logistics and sustainment needed for operations in a highly contested environment. Alongside these capabilities, we are building a combat-credible force posture in the Indo-Pacific, working toward a more distributed, lethal, and resilient forward posture essential to addressing the full suite of challenges we face in the region. We are also doubling down on one of our greatest strategic advantages, our network of allies and partners. As I look across the region, I see our defense ties growing at a rapid pace. With the U.S.-Japan alliance as the cornerstone of regional peace, we are deepening our defense cooperation with the Japan Self-Defense Forces, optimizing our alliance force posture, and integrating the alliance into a broader regional security network of like-minded nations. We are also continuing to strengthen the U.S.-ROK alliance, the linchpin of peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula and in the Indo-Pacific region, remaining focused on enhancing deterrence and alliance readiness. The U.S.-Australia alliance is also surging forward with considerable momentum. Last year, we announced several new initiatives to substantially deepen force posture cooperation in land, air, and maritime domains, and we announced the historic AUKUS trilateral security partnership with the United Kingdom and Australia. We recognize the importance of our alliances with the Philippines and Thailand as well, as we are proud of the work we have done to revive the Visiting Forces Agreement with the Philippines and the steps we are taking to strengthen our security cooperation with our Thai allies. Likewise, we are seeing historic progress in our major defense partnership with India as we continue to integrate and operationalize our day-to-day defense cooperation and logistics, enhance information sharing, and grow our bilateral cooperation in emerging domains such as space and cyberspace. And we've been working throughout Southeast Asia to strengthen capabilities and improve our interoperability with partners including Singapore, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Timor-Leste. We are also bringing our partners together with colleagues across the U.S. government to elevate the Quad as a premier regional grouping while we remain committed to ASEAN centrality. Consistent with our commitment to our One China policy, the Taiwan Relations Act, the 3 joint communiques, and the 6 assurances, we are focused on maintaining peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. With the PRC as the department's pacing challenge, Taiwan is the pacing scenario, and we aim to deter and deny PRC aggression through a combination of Taiwan's own defenses, its partnership with the United States, and growing support from like-minded democracies. Finally, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to close by thanking all of you for your strong, bipartisan support for the Indo-Pacific. It is my firm belief that this bipartisanship is one of our most powerful assets in rising to the China challenge and should be nurtured and treated as such. Thank you for your time and attention, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Admiral Aquilino.
Chairman Smith, Ranking Member Rogers, and the distinguished members of the committee, thank you for also allowing me to appear today and have a conversation. I really, truly appreciated our closed session yesterday. Thank you for that. I also would like to thank all of you for your dedicated support to the Indo-Pacific Command, our service members, and their families. The People's Republic of China is the most consequential strategic competitor that the United States has faced. They are executing a dedicated campaign that utilizes all forms of national power in an attempt to uproot the rules-based international order to the benefit of themselves and at the expense of all others. Russia also presents some serious risks. As evident from their unprovoked and unjustified attack on the Ukraine, Russia has no regard for international law, its own commitments, or any principles that uphold global peace. Similarly, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, the DPRK, as well as violent extremist organizations, also pose acute threats to peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region. To address these threats, Secretary Austin has articulated clear priorities: defend the homeland, deter our adversaries, and strengthen our allies and partners. These priorities are advanced through integrated deterrence, which is the Department's approach to preventing conflict through the synchronization of all elements of national power, coordinated with the joint force across all domains, together with our allies and partners. Indo-PACOM's mission is to prevent conflict through the execution of integrated deterrence. And should deterrence fail, we must be prepared to fight and win. Seize the Initiative describes Indo-PACOM's approach to accomplishing these missions. This approach requires the joint force to think, act, and operate differently by realigning our posture, advancing our warfighting capabilities, in order to provide the President and the Secretary with options across the entire spectrum of competition, crisis, or conflict. Effective deterrence requires significant investment to defend the homeland, protect the joint force, operate in contested space, and provide all-domain battle space awareness with an integrated fires network that synchronizes the joint force. These initiatives are incorporated into the theater campaign plan. They are facilitated and supported by agile logistics, a robust experimentation program, as well as exercises, and constant collaboration with our allies and partners to promote peace in the region. We must take concerted efforts to increase our resilience and strengthen our capabilities through sustained investments, utilizing predictable budgets, a strong industrial base, and reliable supply chains. I'm optimistic we will see a strategy-based FY23 budget that takes the appropriate initial steps to address key adversarial challenges and increase our warfighting advantages. The resources we commit now and in the future will preserve a free and open Indo-Pacific, strengthen our deterrence posture, and provide us the ability to fight and win should deterrence fail. Thanks to the committee, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. General LaCamera.
Chairman Smith, Ranking Member Rogers, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear with you today. I appreciate your leadership and dedication in supporting our total force and our families who work with our Korean allies and United Nations sending states in order to maintain a stable and secure environment on the Korean Peninsula. I would also like to thank President Biden, Secretary Austin, and General Milley for their continued leadership and support, along with Admiral Aquilino, the functional combatant commanders who support us, my fellow component commanders, and my interagency colleagues. It's easy to stand on freedom's frontier with this tremendous support. Finally, I want to thank our Korean hosts and their professional military. I'm pleased to update you on the great work done by our dedicated personnel who serve in the Republic of Korea. They are professionally executing the missions of the United Nations Command, Combined Forces Command, and the United States Forces Korea. The United States Republic of Korea alliance was forged in the crucible of battle
While the Democratic People's Republic of Korea continues to pose multiple threats to the region and international security, this alliance remains the linchpin of regional stability and has prevented a resumption of the hostilities that shredded peace on the Korean Peninsula some 72 years ago. It remains ironclad, and our service members, along with the Republic of Korea military, are trained and ready to respond to a provocation or crisis if called upon. Our three commands, United Nations Command, Combined Forces Command, and United States Forces Korea, must remain vigilant, prepared, and ready. Under one commander, these three commands are empowered to maintain a stabilized security environment for the Republic of Korea, our regional allies, and our partners. We have international legitimacy through the United Nations Command, whose mission is to enforce the 1953 Armistice Agreement, coordinate UN sending state contributions, and execute assigned functions directed by the United States national authorities through the Joint Chiefs of Staff to preserve peace and security on the Korean Peninsula. We are proud of the combined teamwork of the U.S.-Korean alliance. Combined Forces Command is the combined warfighting headquarters representing the U.S.-Korea bilateral military partnership. Formed in 1978, it's a unique entity that takes policy, direction, and missions from the Combined Military Committee and is governed by and subject to binational decision-making and consensus. We maintain our strong U.S. commitment to Korea. U.S. Forces Korea is the premier joint force committed to defending the security of the Republic of Korea. It's disciplined, trained, and ready to fight tonight, respond in crisis, and win in conflict. Central to meeting any threats is resourcing the strengthening of our force and best possible care of our families. I'm grateful for your support and leadership in these no-fail tasks. I know you're aware of South Korea's powerful economic, military, and technical standings. No doubt you're aware of their social impact. All of this is part of the hard work, discipline, and dedication of the Korean people, all done under the security umbrella of the U.S.-Korea alliance. The Republic of Korea is an incredible ally, and it's a privilege to move into the future together with them in the land of the morning calm. I'm honored to command and serve this dedicated multinational combined and joint force in one of the most significant dynamic regions of the world. Those who serve there are committed, capable, and well-supported. The force is postured to deter aggression, protect U.S. interests, and if needed, defeat any adversary. As long as the threat persists, the U.S.-Korean alliance remains vigilant, determined, and steadfast in defense of the Korean Peninsula and across the region. As the commander of these incredible service members, I appreciate this committee's continued support to fully prepare them to fight and win on the most dangerous piece of ground, the last 100 meters of land, sea, and air. Under one flag, Kachikapshida, we go together, fight tonight. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an opening statement. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. One programming note before we get going with questions. There are going to be votes at some point. It is my intention to continue the hearing through the votes because it would be impossible if we had to take that delay. There's about half hour, probably 40 minutes between the two votes. So we're just going to rotate people in and out, and we'll figure out how we're going to do that. But we're going to keep going. General LaCamera, so we talked a little bit about the alliances and the different pieces out there. First of all, I know South Korea is, I think, just completed their elections as we're sitting here, or in the middle of them at any rate, so curious how that's going, if you've heard. But how do you see South Korea, not just in terms of North Korea, though I want to hear about that as well, fitting into the larger partnership? We've talked about the Quad that we've developed with Japan, Australia, and India, and other partners. How does South Korea view the competition with China in the region, and how can we best use them as a partner and an ally in the region for that? And then I would be curious to get your sort of latest take on what North Korea is thinking with their latest missile tests and how you evaluate that threat at the moment.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the challenge with the Republic of Korea is that, the first thing they'll tell you is their economic partner is China, their security partner is the United States, and that can be a little bit concerning because as we go forward, the concern is always, are they or the North Koreans, and really to your second question, are they trying to drive a wedge between us, the United States, and the Republic of Korea as a way of winning without fighting? THAAD was a perfect example in 2017 where they put some economic pressure on the Republic of Korea. We have seemed to come out of that. We have THAAD up and running, and we continue to move forward. I look at the Republic of Korea and, quite frankly, the United Nations sending states and the ROC U.S. or the Australian alliance or Japanese alliance as opportunities to get the Koreans off the peninsula to do some additional training as training becomes a little bit restricted, but also to expose them to other militaries. When it comes to DPRK, I think he is focused solely internally on protecting his regime, and that's what this nuclear testing and the missiles is really about, protecting his position in the world.
Thank you. And Dr. Ratner and Admiral Aquilino, when it comes to the big question of how we present a legitimate deterrence to China in the region, given what they've done in the last decade, and I know it's no one thing, but if you could sort of sum up how we need to change our military capability, because in terms of where we should spend our money, what programs we should put the highest priority on, what are the capabilities that we most need to get better at and develop to counter what China has done?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'll go first if it's okay with Dr. Ratner. First of all, I think we must look through the PRC issue as not just today, right? So it's a short-term problem, it's a medium-term problem, and it's a long-term problem. So I can tell you what we're doing today as it applies to adjusting our posture, both of places we operate from, the amount and position of forces where we put it is important. That power in a place that matters with the right capabilities today is the deterrent factor. Combine that with the exercising operations with our allies and partners presents a pretty good deterrent force today. On the capability side, in the mid and longer term, I appreciate the department's support for some of the asks, and I highlighted a couple of them in my statement, right? So the ability to operate in contested space consistently and survivably, as you highlighted in your statement. The ability to have persistent battle space awareness of all things going on.
I guess we kind of know that part. The question is, what does that mean? Okay, so to do that, we need to build this and not build that. We need to develop this technology. We need to develop that technology. What's going to survive in that environment? What do we need to put our money in so that that happens?
Yeah, integrated and resilient, sustainable ISR capabilities, a network that links all of that together and displays it for all forces on the battlefield in a consistent way, and then ultimately the ability to close those kill chains with the correct weapons and fires.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Ratner?
Mr. Chairman, the only thing I would add is, in addition to the capabilities that Admiral Aquilino mentioned, we are working to update operational concepts, as you know, with the joint warfighting concept, a more distributed force posture, and then building our allies and partners into our deterrence frameworks as well.
So basically, we need to make sure we don't have a few big, rich targets. We need to have, sort of redundancy, spread out, survivable systems so that no matter what China does, we can continue to communicate and continue to operate.
Yeah, I would say the characteristics of the force that I described in my opening statement are the ones that drive the capabilities investments: lethality, resilience, sustainability, survivability, and being agile and responsive, exactly as you described, Mr. Chairman, in your opening statement.
Thank you. Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, never did get the answer to the chairman's question. Who won the election, or do we know the results?
When I came in here, Congressman, it's too close to call right now, so.
Sounds familiar. We've had that problem around here for a while. You talked about the stepped-up testing by North Korea. How does the maturing North Korean missile capability affect your posture?
Ballistic missile defense is a top priority. Protection, making sure that Admiral Aquilino just brought up on the, ISR. Typically we say ISR is one noun, but to me it's three verbs. And making sure that we can see into what he's doing, and can we get after a kill web to interdict, prevent it from, from striking South Korea or striking any U.S. interests in the region.
Do you have adequate ISR in your opinion?
Currently, I do. The challenge right now is placement and access, given the comprehensive military agreement between the Republic of Korea and the DPRK.
When you look at your posture and your responsibilities, what is the one thing that we could help you most with in addressing capability issues? And one of the things that I'm always mindful of is the huge number of rocket launchers he has near Seoul, and how you would defend against that onslaught.
Yeah, there's two threats to that. There's the conventional threat is artillery, long-range artillery that can range Seoul from the north, and then his theater ballistic missile capability that he's developing. So it's the Patriot THAAD and making sure that we have the redundancy and the resiliency and the number of arrows. But to me, it's more than just trading arrows for arrows. We've got to make sure that we can get after the entire kill web to be able to get into his systems, and I can provide a much better description of this in a secure environment.
I understand. Well, we need to know, because we want to give you what you need, so get it to us in whatever fashion you need to. Dr. Ratner, we need to convince our allies and partners that we're in the Pacific for the long haul. I think that we on this committee genuinely mean that. How can we build that credibility in the region, in your view?
Thank you, sir. I think there are a few elements we can do to ensure that the region believes that we're going to be there for the long haul. Primarily, many of those occur outside the military domain, and certainly the jurisdiction of the Defense Department in terms of active diplomacy and an active trade and investment strategy and leadership in the region. That's probably the most important thing we could do. But from a military perspective, I think maintaining our forward posture, continuing to invest in our alliances, and working with partners on issues that are important to them, not just issues that are important to us, is the right formula.
Great. And Admiral, closing Red Hill is going to impact your operations. Can you tell me or tell this committee how you intend to address that closure?
Thank you, sir. Absolutely. As we looked and developed options for senior leader decisions with regard to Red Hill, again, we had three criteria that we had to make sure we were getting right. Number one, clean water for the people of Hawaii, service members and their families. Number two, we had to be able to meet the war plan and the war fighting requirements. And then third, we obviously always look at costs and ensure we're good stewards of the taxpayers' money. We developed a plan that actually goes in alignment with how we talked about a more distributed plan, both forward and land-based, combined with a sea-based component to allow for a more distributed, survivable, resilient network of fuels, as well as meeting all the security and the strategic fuel reserve requirements. So as we looked at this, I think we're actually going to be in a better place, and we meet all three requirements as I laid out.
What time frame is going to be needed to make this transition?
Congressman, I think we'll go in coordination with all of the members that are working this. That's the EPA, the Hawaii Department of Health, and the Department of Defense. We will go as fast as SAFE allows. We have to make sure the facility is safe to transfer that fuel into the places we're going to send it. But we're certainly not waiting. As soon as we can get it done, we'll be ready to move. And as soon as we're able to contract some of those other facilities, as well as the sea-based option.
So you're not closing Red Hill until you have this new capability in place?
We will close Red Hill. I think the Secretary's announcement was within the year, and that just allows us to be able to distribute that fuel with the contract requirements, the sea-based requirements, and the need to put it in the correct spots.
That's my point, though. I want to make sure that you're going to be able to fuel your O-plans when you close that place.
Yes, sir. We'll be able to do it, and we'll be able to do it fairly quickly, I
Great.
think.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Larson is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Admiral. Thanks, Chair. Admiral, earlier this year, the Army began developing and testing a tactical cloud system that would be deployed in the Indo-Pacific region. Can you, in this setting, explain why that would be important for the Indo-Pacific?
Thanks, Congressman. So, first of all, the ability to make sure that our data is safe, secure in a cyber environment is critical. So that's one portion of it. Additionally, it's going to help to support one of our primary initiatives called a mission partner environment, which is the ability in a cyber-safe environment to share information with all of our partners, to be able to coordinate events, operations, exercises through a single communication mechanism. So really, it kind of comes down to the ability to defend our information and our data.
Yeah. So I want to build out from that for Dr. Ratner and how, because this gets to the importance of the tyranny of distance, but also closing that through secure communications among friends and allies. Building that, sort of using that hub and spoke model that we used post-World War II to build out our friends and alliances in the Pacific. How are we going to assess what countries are, earn their way into this communication network, into this one as well as any others that we're trying to set up in that region?
Yeah, thank you, Congressman Larson. And Admiral Aquilino may want to say another word on some of the communications networks that he's looking to build in the region. I'll just say we are in careful analysis and consultation with our partners on their information security, both assessing them, helping them improve and clean up their networks, and moving in ways that are deliberate and ensure that we're not building that network so fast that it's going to be compromised. So this is something we take quite seriously. PRC penetration of networks throughout the region is quite severe, and it's something we need to manage.
Admiral?
Yeah, thanks, sir. So we're obviously concerned about everyone's networks, our own and all of our allies and partners. This mission partner environment, allows us to work together with them to be able to develop the maximum security that we have access to and then align it with all of our partners. So there's really kind of two wins here in this objective.
Yeah, let me take one more step on this conversation. Dr. Ratner alludes to it, what China, the PRC is doing in the last several years, and I think we've talked about this earlier last year, perhaps on a call, has reorganized the PLA to include their strategic support forces, which are both network and space, including cyber and EW and a variety of other things. So on this point, not to tell us what's in the budget, because 22 years I realized that would be a waste of time to ask you before the budget got here. Could you generally say perhaps that the budget investment reflects the need to be responsive to the development of the SSF and what it's doing, how the PLA is using the strategic support forces, as well as getting ahead of that, as well as doing the investments regardless of whether or not the SSF existed?
Yes, Congressman, without getting into details about the budget, I can assure you that the department is very focused on these issues. We had an opportunity earlier this week to do a tabletop exercise with members of this committee in which we focused specifically on some of these areas, including space and cyber. And you'll see in the Secretary's concept of integrated deterrence, which Admiral Aquilino mentioned, part of the rationale there is that we ourselves need to be integrating across domains, including space and cyber, as we think about this competition.
Yeah, we'll move there. Just a little time left. Have you, if you can share this, given the Putin's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine, have you seen a change in Russian force posture in their east?
Thanks, Congressman. So absolutely in preparation. They pushed out 20 ships and submarines, as we can count. They placed them in defensive positions. They postured other forces to be able to defend their eastern flank. So we absolutely have seen a change, and we continue to monitor those like we do every day.
All right, thanks. I'll ask the question and take it for the record, but it has to do with India's ambivalent role right now relative to U.S. security interests with regards to Ukraine. and I'll develop something specific for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Turner is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Admiral, in your written comments, you reference the United Kingdom and joint exercises that were held with both the U.S. and others, and you also mentioned that the F-35. I want to read to you the provision that's here, and I have two questions with you. One is, could you tell us about partner nations that are outside Indo-PACOM that are assisting in the area, and also the role of the F-35? You state that the UK has demonstrated its immense capacity to project combat power into the region. The Queen Elizabeth Carrier Strike Task Group, which included embarked UK and US Marine Corps F-35Bs. So I'm assuming we both had F-35s, that there were escort ships from both the Netherlands and the United States. And then you also cite the acquisition by the Republic of Korea for the F-35A. Could you tell us of your work with other partner nations and the role of the F-35 in the area?
Thanks, Congressman. So the importance of the F-35 can't be overstated, right? So when we talked in the beginning, the PRC has developed a set of systems in an attempt to keep the United States out of the Pacific. The F-35 from the air domain is critical to be able to operate in that contested space. That fifth-generation airplane with the highest technology available.
You're referencing China's J-20?
I'm referencing our F-35.
But I mean, when you're talking about China also as a pure threat in the area, that you're looking to their equipment as an additional need for the F-35.
Yeah, absolutely, sir. So they have just begun production of their J-20, their first fifth-generation airplane, which ups the ante. And again, with the technology and the capability of the F-35, that's why it's so critical. As it applies to being able to operate in that contested space, the technologies that come with that airplane allow it to happen.
And then joint exercises, you referenced the UK and Netherlands?
So when we talk about integrated deterrence, that's a pretty good example of one operation that we've done. The UK, as you know, have built and have now deployed one of their aircraft carrier strike groups. We did an operation with 7 nations, 4 big deck ships. The Japanese provided one of their large deck DDHs. The Queen Elizabeth was there, and as well was the Ronald Reagan and the USS Carl Vinson. That was combined with all of our domain capabilities in the form of bombers, ground forces, cyber capabilities, space capabilities, and worked together with 7 nations, the Netherlands, Australians, Canadians. Again, I think that the friends and partners outside of the region also understand the importance of the region, and we see them operate with us, hopefully, more frequently. The French come to the regions. You most recently read about the Germans deploying to the Pacific. I'm hoping and working to get more of that. And with those partners, we operate with them all the time.
Well, my next question relates to exercises and also with the Republic of Korea. General, you mentioned trying to get people out of the area because of restrictions with respect to exercises. As part of our 2021 NDAA, we required, as part of the Pacific deterrence, an actual plan to be provided us by your command admiral. And in it, it listed exercises as one of the primary focus and goals. It also, unfortunately, includes information that your funding was cut for exercises in 2022. I'm aware that there have been, I believe, some over-concerns about the issues of provocation of exercises. When it's one of your primary goals of exercises, and we know our partners that are in the region need exercises to be effective, what are we doing to ensure that that we're able to conduct exercises in the region, and that we're investing appropriately, and we're ensuring that the Republic of Korea has the ability to exercise without an over-concern of being provocative in the region? And I'll let all 3 of you answer that one.
Thanks, Congressman. So for the exercises, we do over 120 exercises every year. COVID has impacted some of those. We've scaled some down. We've reduced, or we've postponed some because of the COVID piece. But bottom line is, we haven't reduced any of those exercises. As a matter of fact, when I met with the chiefs of defense across the region most recently in July. What we've agreed to is actually to try to expand those into more
Mr. Secretary, do you have concerns about exercises in the region?
Congressman, I do share.
Gentleman's time's expired. If you can finish in about 10 seconds, thank you.
I would say I share Admiral Aquilino's view. I do have concerns about the readiness of our forces on the Korean Peninsula, and I know that's something we're working on.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Mr. Representative Courtney for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Rick, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. Dr. Ratner, David Ignatius, who's been sort of covering foreign policy and military policy for quite a few years, made the observation that in terms of hard power, the AUKUS alliance with Australia and Britain is the most important strategic move in decades. And again, congratulations to the administration for helping make that come together. The response in Australia, as you and I have discussed, is very positive, 60% approval in public opinion polls. The government announced just a few days ago that they are moving forward for an eastern Navy base on the eastern side of Australia to complement Stirling, which is on the western side near Perth. So they clearly, it's all in, and that's a long-term, that's a long game commitment that's there. And I know Admiral Caldwell at Naval Reactors is hard at work with the transition. It's a big job to figure out the industrial-based challenge, which is huge. But in the meantime, I mean, there's another piece of this, which is, you know, the helping the Australian Navy sort of make this transformation. And it seems to me, and a number of us, that, you know, having joint training at the Nuclear Power School in South Carolina for Australian sailors and officers would be, you know, we have to do it. And why don't we start? I mean, it's a good, visible, tangible way to really show, you know, our allies in the world that this is real, that it's not just a press release, you know, back in September. I don't know if you're nodding, Admiral Aquilino. What's your thoughts on that?
Congressman, it really is an important step forward. I do concur with that. But I do want to remember that the submarine piece is one portion of it, right? So we're cooperating in other domains to expand our capabilities and capacities with the Australians and the Brits in the form of space and cyber, in the form of being able to develop posture and operate from there. And I'm going to be in Australia the week after next with really great partners, General Nakasone and General Dickinson, to start on that space and cyber improvement. On the submarine piece, as you know, they're studying the best way to go forward. Big decisions, and they want to go about it methodically. I spoke to Admiral Caldwell last night. We're on the same page. As soon as they're ready to start, Admiral Caldwell is ready to support with regard to the start of schooling, and then we have options to be able to bridge, right? How do we operate together, Australians on U.S., British submarines? We're going to work through that. Safety is clearly a concern from Admiral Caldwell, but we are doing everything possible to move this as fast as possible.
Well, that's good to hear. And again, I think certainly this committee is going to want to do everything to enable the success of that, and in terms of whether there's ITAR issues or whether there's, again, McMahon Act issues in terms of just clearing any, you know, legal obstacles. Admiral, you talked about, again, the pivot away from Red Hill and the at-sea component. I think sort of spotlights the importance of sea lift. Again, in a few hours, we're going to vote on an omnibus, which adds 10 U.S. flagged ships to the fleet, bring it about to 90. And again, these are not new construction. These are used ships that are going to be U.S. flagged and with a stipend enabled to do that. But I mean, it still seems like it's still a big enterprise, you know, to have that disbursement, which I do think makes sense. I mean, can you talk about sea lift in terms of just, it's sometimes overlooked in the grand strategy discussions?
Yes, sir. It's critical to the approach and the position to be able to be more distributed in many different locations, both ashore and at sea. You're talking about the sea-based component of that. And I thank the committee for the support for the TSP. A great partner, General Van Oost, and her command identified in a previous study that there was risk with regard to the number and access to U.S. flagged tankers. This is a great step to start in that direction, and again, I believe it will contribute to the result and the way forward on Red Hill. So it's really important across all sea lift, not just fuel.
Can you comment on what sea lift means in the terms of the North Korean peninsula?
Yes, Congressman. And Admiral Aquilino and I have had this conversation, when does strategic movement become operational maneuver? And at what point, is he responsible for delivering to a certain point, and then I've got to secure it, bringing it in? There's tremendous capacity on the peninsula right now but for the Korean people, but we're going to rely on Japan to bring supplies in and forces, and we're going to rely on sea lift and airlift to build our combat power for any crisis or conflict.
Thank you. Mr. Lambert is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Ratner, in the last NDAA, I offered language and the committee supported it, asking for a report on asymmetrical defensive capabilities on the part of Taiwan. Ground-based anti-ship cruise missiles, ground-based cruise missiles, and anti-ship mines. And I believe that got caught up in a larger report request that the Secretary is supposed to produce for this committee. And is that coming along satisfactorily? Because the importance of these reports is so that we can make sure our industry partners are producing these kinds of armaments sufficiently, and that secondly, that they're getting into the hands of our Taiwanese partners and friends. So will that report be forthcoming soon?
Congressman, I'll have to check on the exact timing of that report. As you know, I was before this committee probably about 6 weeks ago and did an in-depth classified briefing on Taiwan in particular, and we discussed each of these capabilities in depth. The department is extremely focused on ensuring we can get these in the hands of the Taiwans as quickly as possible, and I'd be happy to, in advance of the report, to provide your office with any additional information.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. Admiral Aquilino, there is a lot of concern by many of us about hypersonic weapons and how China, Russia, and even North Korea are doing what they can in this area. What are your concerns about their progress, and what do we need to do better on our part?
Thanks, Congressman. So the real concern is the speed and pace at which they're showing up, as you articulated. So that's the issue. That we have security challengers that are working towards capabilities that are challenging. We're getting after it through my number one unfunded request, as articulated, was a Defense of Guam system to get right after this issue. Now, it's complex. We're coordinating with the department, but we need to be able to defend both our people, right? Defend the homeland, the Secretary's number one priority, as well as the forces and where we place them to be able to operate.
Now, you mentioned Guam, and you said in your posture statement that Guam's strategic importance is difficult to overstate. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Absolutely, Congressman. The area in the Indo-Pacific is expansive. Half the globe, and a lot of it water. So to be able to posture forces in places that matter with the right capabilities, we've focused on Guam as a strategic hub, as you would expect. Governor Guerrero is a wonderful partner and a patriot. And as you know, it's about $11 billion worth of construction as we work through posturing of our forces that will end up on Guam, so we have to protect it.
And lastly, can you enlighten us regarding the department's progress in, this is for Secretary Ratner, the department's progress in prioritization of missile defense funding for Guam?
Yes, Congressman, the department is currently in the final stages of the missile defense review, which will lay out strategy and priorities, and that should be forthcoming alongside the National Defense Strategy, hopefully in the coming weeks.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have for now, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back to you.
Thank you. Mr. Keating is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question, just 2 days ago, UK's Foreign Minister, Liz Truss, said to Parliament there in London that the reason that India abstained in the UN recently on the vote about Russian aggression was both economic and defense oriented. Could you enlighten any of us as to why, what areas of defense she could have been alluding to, and what is your opinion on how India's inability to, vote at the UN in favor of condemning Russia for the aggression, how that could be defense oriented on their part?
Sure. Thank you, Congressman. I can start on that. And there was a reference earlier to this issue as well. What I would just start by saying is that from the U.S. perspective, I think India is an absolutely essential partner as we think about our strategy in the Indo-Pacific, and both in terms of how we're building coalition partners as well as dealing with potential adversaries. We recognize that India has a complicated history and relationship with Russia. The majority of their weapons they buy from the Russians. The good news is that they are in a multi-year process of diversifying their arms purchases away from Russia. That's going to take some time, but they are clearly committed to doing that, including increasing the indigenization of their own defense industry, and that's something we should support. So I think in terms of the overall relationship and in terms of their relationship with Russia, the trend lines are moving in the right direction.
All right. China's mentioned its investment advancing their own technology. I'm particularly interested in unmanned underwater technology that they might have. Can you talk to us about what they're doing and what you think we should be doing to expand our footprint in this kind of technology?
Thank you, Congressman. As we've watched, this is the largest military buildup that we've seen since World War II coming out of the PRC, and that includes all domains. It also includes all types of technologies. Congressman Moulton and I had a conversation yesterday about some of those. So we shouldn't be surprised to see them advancing their unmanned capabilities in all domains. When we continue to watch it, we'd have to have additional conversations at a classified level.
But is it an area that we ourselves are stepping up the game on?
We absolutely are. As you know, we've been leading the path for unmanned. I think I saw the CNO last week talked about a fleet that includes both manned and unmanned. As you know, we already operate Global Hawks, Predators, and other types of unmanned domains. So it's an opportunity for us that we have to continue to explore and expand.
Good. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for having this important hearing, and I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Whitman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, thank our witnesses for joining us today. Admiral Aquilino, I want to go to you and go back a year when Admiral Davidson was here as your predecessor, and he talked about the erosion of strategic deterrence in that region and how incredibly important that is to make sure we keep the Chinese at bay. I know that you spoke about the battle force as it exists today with the PLA Navy of approximately 350 ships and submarines, and more than 130 of those are major surface combatants. You also spoke about having a fleet of 420 battleships by 2025, and I'll add that DOD says that by 2030, the PLA Navy probably has about 460 ships. That is very, very different than the course that we are on with the number of ships that we have. And it's not just the number of ships that we're building, but it's also the A sub O, as you know, operational availability for the ships that we have. Many times maintenance availability is extended or time at sea extended, so we're wearing our ships out faster because we're double pumping them on deployments. From your perspective, if we're unable to accelerate the fielding of new vessels and maintaining the vessels that we have to have a high level of A sub O operational availability, what do you think will be the primary risks going forward in the next 5 years in Indo-PACOM?
Thanks, Congressman. So, you highlight one of the challenges and things we're watching very closely is the expansive and growth in both capability and capacity of the security challengers in the region as it compares to ours. So let me start by saying we still have the world's greatest Navy. We need to maintain and keep that advantage. And there's a variety of ways that you can get to it. The CNO, again, just the other day, talked about the unmanned capacity and how does that plug in. With regard to the A-sub-O, through the Global Force Management System, we are operating through a supply-based model. That supply-based accounts for the sustainability in the near, mid, and long-term aspects. So we've operated in that construct, and we have to continue to watch the capability and capacity differences.
To take that a step further, not just U.S. capability and capacity and presence in the Asia-Pacific, but also the ability for us to leverage much more in-depth relationships with friends and allies in the region. That's a big place, lots of things to do. If we don't have friends that can help us in certain ways, our risk calculus becomes much, much more complex in order to place that risk on the Chinese. Give me your perspective about what you think that we need to be doing, and I'd love to hear Dr. Ratner's thoughts on this, about how we work with allies to a greater extent, like Japan, like Vietnam, like Australia. We know AUKUS, and you talked about that agreement. But I wanted to get a sense about how do we do that, and then how do we get to the point where we are not just having that relationship on paper, but that has to be manifested in how we operationalize that agreement. How do we jointly not only operate, but train together at the highest levels so that if something does happen, it's not, well, let's figure out how we communicate and those sorts of things. Give me your perspective on that.
Yeah, I concur. So you don't surge trust and you don't just come together and operate. But what we're trying to do, again, over 120 exercises a year, and all of the chiefs got together in our discussions. The intent was, hey, we need to increase complexity of these to be able to be interoperable, interdependable. Some examples, we just finished Keen Age with the Japanese. My partner, General Yamazaki, and I met every day for 10 days in coordination with our forces. Really important, very high end. As we sit here today right now, the Army and the Marine Corps are both on the ground in the Philippines and in Thailand to do Cobra Gold and Balikatan. Those relationships are solid. We're about to do RIMPAC in a couple of months, the largest maritime exercise on the planet. I think over 27 nations coming together. And again, we've increased the complexity every year so those are the big ones. On the small front, every day we come together, if we come in contact with our allies and partners, the direction I've given the team is we are going to ensure we can quickly come together, be instantly interoperable, and then work together at any point, at any time. That's the approach we've taken.
Dr. Ratner.
Congressman, I'll just say we obviously have a very wide spectrum of partners, some of which we operate at a very high level, others which have less mature.
And I do apologize, someone's time has expired. We try to move on. I should have said that up front. Even if you're still in the middle of a question, 5 minutes is the limit. We move on to the next member. So we'll have to take that last piece of it for the record. Mr. Kim is recognized for 5 minutes.